All right, it's time for the daily scripture read. I'm going to open this randomly. Oh, oh, not cooperating. All right, Matthew 27. Wow, this is going to be a long one. All right, I might have technical difficulties, but I don't think so. All right, Matthew 27. When morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people plotted against Jesus to put him to death. Wow, escalating very quickly. When they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was remorseful and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? You see to it. He repents, but the Jews don't care. Then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed, and went and hanged himself. That's some guilt. But the chief priests took the silver pieces and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, because they are the price of blood. Then what are you going to do with it? And they consulted together and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Interesting. Therefore, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they of the children of Israel priced, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Interesting. I'm not sure where that was going. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said to him, It is as you say. And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he answered him not one word, so that the governor marveled greatly. Picking and choosing words, picking your battles. That's what I'm getting from it. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to releasing the multitude one prisoner whom they wished. And at that time they had a nourished prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, Whom do you want me to release to you? Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ? For he knew they had handed him over because of envy. Envy is a dangerous thing. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife said to him, saying, Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. Of course. Envy. They want their source of envy to be destroyed. The governor answered and said to them, Which of the two do you want me to release to you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, What then shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They all said to him, Let him be crucified. Then the governor said, Why? What evil has he done? But they cried out all the more, saying, Let him be crucified. Interesting. It's almost, but not quite, the same words and kind of ideology that the left has said about Charlie Kirk. And I'm not calling Charlie Kirk a prophet by any means. I'm just saying that there's a very similar thing here where Charlie was preaching and living by God and loving everybody, no matter what they brought against him. And they could not tolerate that. And thus, it was more after Charlie Kirk's death that they celebrated that, and that is truly vile. It's fucking evil. But I can see that they did not care, for they were convinced of whatever it is that Jesus has done, that it was bad enough for him to be crucified, and thus put to death. When Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was raising, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it. And all the people answered and said, His blood be on us and our children. You wouldn't see the left saying that today. They would try to justify his death. He released Barabbas to them, and then he had scourged Jesus. He delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him. And they stripped him, put a scarlet robe on him. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Sounds about right, mocking. Yeah. Don't like that at all, but, evil does what evil does. Then they spat on him, and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they took the robe off him, and put his own clothes on him, and led him away to be crucified. Now as they come out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. When they had come to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, place of a skull, they gave him sour wine mingled with gall to drink. I kind of want to know what that actually is. Not, you have the gall to say that. There's irritation. Insect-induced growth on plant. Often very distinctive and even species-specific structures that develop when insects, fungi, or bacteria stimulate abnormal growth of a plant. That kind of sounds quite disgusting. But when he had tasted it, he would not drink. I don't blame him for that one. That sounds disgusting. Then they crucified him, and divided his garments, casting lots, and that might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Sitting down, they kept watch over him there, and they put up over his head the accusation written against him. This is Jesus, King of the Jews. When two robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and the other on the left, and those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads. Yeah, you can see that. Except for nowadays, they're laughing. And saying, "You who destroyed the temple and built it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." That's quite a mocking. Likewise, the chief priests also, mocking with the scribes and elders, said, "He saved others. Himself he cannot save. If he is the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him." They lack faith. That's something I have learned. Faith. I always believed, with a lot of different reasons when I was younger, that if God was actually real, he would show himself. It's not how he really works. He works through everything. And what you want is not going to be what necessarily you get, but it will be for your best interest. He trusted in God. Let him deliver him now if he will have him. For he said, "I am the Son of God." Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour there was darkness over all the land. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of those who stood there, when they had heard that, said, "This man is calling for Elijah." Immediately one of them ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and offered it to him to drink. The rest said, "Leave him alone. Let us see if Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split. And the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." So they mocked him, saying, "Oh, well, if you're the Son of God, you can get yourself off that cross." And that would prove it to us. But they didn't get proof in that way. They got proof in the tearing and from the temple being torn into the earth quaking and the rocks being split. And many women who followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, were there looking on from afar, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Now when evening had come, there came a rich man from Arimathea, named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given to him. When Joseph had taken the body, he had wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid in it his new tomb which he had hewn out of the rock and he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and departed. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the tomb. On the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember, while he was still alive, how that deceiver said, After 3 days I will rise. Therefore, command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day, lest disciples come by night and steal him away, and say to the people, He has risen from the dead. So the last deception will be worse than the first. Pilate said to them, You have a guard. Go on your way and make it secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and setting the guard. I think that last bit is pretty self-explanatory. That it's. I will say one thing, that the passing of Jesus upon the cross wasn't explicitly said, but you can definitely infer that the 9th hour he definitely passed away, and thus they took him down, took his body to wherever, and then let me find it. Be patient. This is still new to me. Joseph. I kind of figured. Joseph takes the body, wraps it, lays him in a rock-hewn tomb, and then everybody else wants to secure it as tightly as they can, saying that they don't want the followers of Jesus to steal away his body and then say, oh, he has risen. One thing as I was thinking this, the individual that I follow, okay. Nick Freitas, he has his own podcast, and the one thing he said that, actually no, it was actually Charlie Kirk. He was talking to a student about the Bible and how it's true that if it wasn't true, you wouldn't be using women, as bad as it sounds. It's not actually that bad. You wouldn't be using women as a witness in the resurrection of Jesus. If you wanted it to be fake, you would use men. And that kind of speaks to me on that one, is they had 2 women there actually watching over the tomb. And I can see that going on because from my understanding, that to continue that story, they watched over that tomb for those 3 days and witnessed the resurrection. When they opened the tomb and Jesus was standing there saying, hey, I have risen from the dead, just like I said I would. So that is my reading. I like it, obviously, as I'm trying to get deeper into my faith. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my reading for today, and I'll see you in the next one.